my memory would black out, and I would only have fragments after that. Now, since that time, it's harder for me to remember abductions because the older you get, the more non-plastic your mind becomes, the more it's not as elastic, and so they can fracture your mind. They can compartmentalize your mind way more easily as an adult than they can when you're 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, and you're still in that theta brainwave state, and your mind is still very plastic. You know, it's like trying to crack a thing of silly putty. You just can't do it. But an adult mind, you can sever part of it off and have the abduction experiences happen within that alternate personality. And then when you get back from the abduction, they seal that off, and then you can't remember what happened during the abduction. So the only thing that you really have is you have precursors leading up to the abduction. Like, for example, ear ringings, your cat acting very frazzled and like looking around and seeing like invisible things moving around. You can have that when you're lying down and you go into sleep. When you close your eyes, you might start seeing gray alien faces pop into your hypnagogic vision, for example. And all that is your own subconscious using its very weak ESP powers to pick up on these things, and it translates that into a visual image. So you'll start seeing the black, gray alien eyes, for example, like in your field of vision. And you see, so if you have that, and you got the cat acting weird, and you get ear ringings and other weird signs, then probably an abduction is going to be happening that night. And then afterwards, you might wake up all of a sudden feeling like you hadn't even been asleep. Like, because, you know, when you sleep for a while and then you wake up, you're kind of groggy and your eyes feel kind of dry or something. Well, no, you wake up suddenly and it's like you've been awake for the past couple hours. Or maybe your body temperature, your skin isn't even right. Like, you're under the blanket, but your skin is cold as if you were outside, you know, walking around at night or something. Or conversely, you might get your full 8 hours of sleep, but you wake up feeling like you've only gotten 4 hours of sleep, like you're totally just run over and exhausted, and it doesn't make any sense. So there are different incongruencies like that, which can let you know indirectly that you've had an abduction. Okay. And also afterwards, you can have bruises, you can have weird anomalous scratches and marks. So if you're an abductee, clearly before you go to sleep, just kind of check your body over. You look for bruises, look for cuts or scratches or something, and then check again the next morning, and then you'll definitely see bruises appearing overnight that doesn't make any sense. That, you know, so there are ways to still tell, and that's how I tell. And once I determine that an abduction has happened, I go into preventative measures, because what happens is some abductions are only used for breeding, you know, like harvesting eggs and sperm and creating hybrid babies or whatever they're doing. Okay, but I think a lot of abductions are also used for behavioral conditioning. So they take you on board, they put you down. I'm not 100% sure how this happens, but I think they engage in a kind of psychically augmented hypnosis to implant post-hypnotic suggestions into your mind, into your subconscious during the abduction experience. And then after they put you back, those hypnotic commands, they trigger a couple days later, up to a week later. In my experience, it's never been more than a week, so within about like 1 day to 7 days, those hypnotic commands can trigger, and they can induce a very intense pressure on you to do a certain thing or not do a certain thing, or react a certain way to another person saying something, which can create a conflict that, I don't know, breaks up a friendship or a relationship or something like that. And all these kinds of manipulations, they don't seem like much, but they do have effects because they affect the future. Right? So, for example, if you and a friend are really good at researching and you're having good conversations and you're both like getting a lot out of it, well, if both of you get abducted, or even just one of you gets abducted, you get mind programmed, and 3 days later, that program activates, and all of a sudden you just feel like really irritated at this person, and they say something that feeds into that thought that's been implanted, and it confirms it for you. Well, even if they don't know it, well, then all of a sudden you feel like, I don't want to talk to this person anymore, and then you don't, and then you miss out on the next like 5-10 conversations, which could have taken your life in an amazing direction in terms of your spiritual realizations. So you have to understand that these alien forces, they don't use a heavy hand in manipulating the future or the timeline. They work more in a Zen kind of way, where they target specific little flip points on the timeline. They target those, and they do the tiniest manipulation needed in order to switch the future. Okay, and maybe it's not only aliens doing it. Maybe occult forces like demons, they do it as well. I wouldn't rule out that even certain black ops government programs do that because they got remote viewing. Like remote viewing is a thing. Everyone now understands that secret government programs, they've been experimenting with remote viewing, and if you have good enough remote viewing, and you look at a future, you can trace it back about what is the inception point for that particular future. And if they don't want that, all they have to do then is reverse the remote viewing to make it remote influencing. In other words, remotely psychically influencing someone, and you target that inception point telepathically. So you can target that person, make that person, him or her, do something that they wouldn't have or not do something that they would have just through telepathic pressure. And that then ends up changing the original future that had been remote viewed. Okay. So I think certain Black Ops government groups can probably do that sort of thing, and they've been engaging in that. And the reason why I say that is because, so I used to get these weird noises in my ear, and I still get them sometimes. Well, one time I got them while I was in a semi out-of-body state. So I had woken up out of a dream. I wasn't fully back in my body yet, and all of a sudden I heard my ear making this noise. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to remote view like what the source of this thing is. And so I focused on it, and all you have to do is mentally focus on it to try to trace it back to the source through, just intend it. And all of a sudden I was out of body, and I popped into an underground military base that had like cinder block walls that were painted kind of this beige yellow, and there were 3 vertically stacked tanks, like giant aquariums with people floating in them, hooked up to sensors and wires, and a man in an old brown corduroy suit, or not a corduroy, but like a brown suit, sitting in a chair with a tablet or a clipboard or something, reading a script, like commanding them what to do. So that's pretty weird, and I could sense that they were psychically triangulating in on me, which is kind of weird. I mean, maybe it was a dream experience, but I don't think so, because I definitely was out of body, and I was like going somewhere when I intended to trace the source of this noise. And so I do think that that's one potential example of a remote influencing or remote viewing attempt. The way that it's done nowadays versus like in the old days where you just walk into a room with like paper and you start sketching out your remote viewing thing. I think nowadays they use chemically, possibly technologically enhanced psychics, maybe even genetically altered psychics, to be triangulated upon a particular target under the direction of a script reader or director of the operation. I think that's closer to what's being done nowadays. But the reason I mention that is because these kinds of things can happen, and they're not all alien. Some could be human, some could be occult entity, and so it's sort of a jungle out there. It's just a fact of the matter.
Tom, can we take one quick second?